What's going on, everybody?
We live, baby.
We are live. Tonight we're going to be discussing techniques. Wes, I've used balloons to fish live bait, especially in Tennessee. Have you ever tried balloons?
Yeah, I like them, but they just seem like a lot of trouble. I really don't know the difference. I can't tell the difference between a float and a balloon.
Right.
People say that there's a difference, but it's just a whole lot easier to snap a float on than it is to blow a balloon up and tie it around your line and it slip up and down your line, and they do slip. I don't care how tight you tie it. I don't know. I'm just a lazy fisherman now. So
I used to take a bobber stop and put on my main line, and then a bead, and then a sinker slide. And I would actually, the snap swivel that's on a sinker slide, I would poke it through the balloon, once I blew the balloon up and tied it.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
And then that way I could set the depth at whatever I wanted. I could cast it out and it would slide through but I kind of stopped doing that now. If I use a balloon rig, I just tie the balloon on the line.
Oh, that's why I think most people do it.
I just try to tie it tight, and I try to pay attention.
Most people do it.
Hopefully I can tell if it slides.
I try to pay attention.
I hear your echo.
I got to turn the volume down. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
I read the comments on my phone. But yeah, I think most of them guys up in Tennessee, a lot of them do use balloons. And especially like when I lived in Florida, when we got a west wind, because I lived on the eastern shore of Florida. Mm-hmm. But when we got a west wind, which was very, very uncommon, but when we did, we'd always keep balloons with us because we were trying to balloon a bait out off the pier. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not, but we used to actually take lifesavers, tie your swivel, put a little leader to the swivel, tie it to a lifesaver, and then tie the other end through that lifesaver to your balloon, and just let out much as line as you can. And depending on the wind, and the tide, but on an outgoing tide, when it gets out there so far, if it gets it where you want it, you can just pop it, let your balloon go, and your bait will drop.
Oh yeah.
Or eventually, just let it go until the lifesaver dissolves, and then your balloon will drop. So
okay.
Yeah.
That is cool. I've never heard that. That is really cool. What's going on, David Mercer, Mike Bradford, Matthew Miles? Hey, Dieter. Dieter says he's laying down some music tracks. He said he'll join intently momentarily. Anyone heard Vandal Fishing? I saw where Matthew Miles finally debuted his Vandal Fishing logo and Facebook page and brand. And I think that's awesome. I love Matthew. I loved Catfish Clothing with a K. I mean, I think that that brand really brought some class to the industry, and I can't wait to see what Vandal is going to do. I know that I'm pretty stoked about it.
Now, what is Vandal? Is it a clothing line or just a
Vandal is it's a brand, and I think Matthew's. You know what? I don't even want to say. Matthew's told me some stuff. He told me to be tight-lipped about it, and he literally just created that Facebook page like 10 minutes ago. So I haven't really looked at it good yet.
All right.
But Matthew can answer that in the comments if he wants.
Well, we got David Mercer on. What's up, Mike Bradford? Matthew Miles, Daryl Barney, William Lampkin, Dieter Mill. We knew Dieter was on here. Thomas J, Corey Martin. What's up, everybody? We're talking tonight about techniques, what we like to do, different ways we like to fish for the fish we fish for. If anybody wants to chime in, talk about what you like to do, that's fine. We were just talking about ballooning versus, snap-on floats.
Dieter said he's wrapping his boat after CatCon with that Vandal logo. I doubt that, Dieter. That would be awesome. That'd be an awesome wrap, though. Shoot, yeah.
Hey, JR, did you ever use, I don't know if they said Mike Smedley designed them or made them or just he endorsed them, but the little planer floats.
Yeah, the planer bobbers.
Yeah.
He designed those for Ready Rig, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They weren't good. I mean, they wouldn't like a planer board, but they were just kind of then keep your bait from directly behind the boat. If you're just trying to cover a little bit
Directly
more
behind
water,
the boat. Yeah.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
can run a free line or a down line, and you could use those planers just to keep it right outside the boat. So
I've never been quite that serious about, I mean, once I get a couple sets of boards out and some free lines, some down rods, I put a shotgun out. It's a transom. I got my hands full. I don't really need to fill that little gap right there on the corner of the transom, but I could see where it would come in handy for some people, depending on your situation. I imagine it probably doesn't really work that well in some situations, but it probably works really well in other situations.
Well, a lot of people's theory, and I can understand this, is the more bait in the water you got in the water, the more chances you got to catch a fish. But there again, the way I striper fish, if I'm pulling down a river that's 100 foot wide, 80 foot, 100 foot wide, and I've got 3 big trout out there, if there's a fish anywhere in that area, he knows that bait's out there.
It makes you wonder, these guys to go out and put 14 rods out, 16 rods out, whatever, a lot of rods. It makes you wonder if they would have had, if they get in a tournament, let's say they come in 30th out of 100 boats. So say they caught 50 pounds and 2 fish. Would they have caught those fish had they only been using 2 rods? It makes you wonder if now I know I've experienced this myself, where you're anchor fishing, and you'll set on anchor for an hour, not get a bite, pull anchor and drift your boat 100 feet, away, and then re-anchor and then catch fish.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of area makes a difference sometimes, but that could have just been coincidence. Who knows?
Corey Martin wants to know, where do we hook herring when you down rod? Corey, most people hook them right between the nose, right above the nostrils. When we fished the SBC here a couple of months ago, actually January, Scott Perry, and it's pretty cool. He said it helps keep them from turning and turning back into the hook, but he'll go through their mouth and out one nostril.
And that'll prevent them from ever turning and hooking themselves.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Matthew Miles said, what's your live bait hook of choice? Wes, I'll let you go first on that one.
Live bait?
Live bait hook of choice.
Anything Gamakatsu. Octopus straight. Octopus J hook. There again, I think we covered this a couple of weeks ago. Scott Perry's one of the few people that I know, and Scott catches a lot of fish, but he loves a circle hook. I don't think he fishes with nothing but circle hooks. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm just a jerker. That's just my, a lot of people say they use circle hooks, leave it in the rod. Rod goes off, just wind down, the hook sets itself. It's just personal preference, I guess, but I just like straight J hooks, straight octopus J hooks is my.
So Gamakatsu, as long as it's not a circle.
As long as it's not a circle.
I'm a Gamakatsu guy. Actually went down to visit John, Mr. John, the guy that fishes bank fishes on Lake Wiley there at the Busted Boy Landing. He's there all the time. Everybody knows him on Lake Wiley. Old John. Anyways, he turned me on to some. He told me to check out Hyper. I put it on my phone. Where's my phone at? It's Hyper Cat hooks. They're circle. They look like they're a smaller diameter wire hook, like a Gamakatsu. They look like a Gamakatsu, but he says they're sharper than Gamakatsus. But they're an offset Ben eye circle, so you're good to snell, and they're offset and they're circles, and they make 10 knots. So I like those, and I like I've always been a Gamakatsu guy, but I love Owner. I like Mustad. I like a lot of different. Now I did try the Bass Pro brand hooks. They broke. I don't like. I'll never use those again.
Well, if you feel, and there again, and I don't know how big a difference it is. I don't think we've ever really talked about this, but if you take a Gamakatsu hook, say you take a 10-aught Gamakatsu straight J hook, you feel how sharp it is. I've never been used.
You striper guys use those river hooks, those Gamakatsu big river hooks.
Well, how much sharper? Then I hear people talk about the Eagle Claw. Which one is it? The one that's got 4 edges. It's like a tapered.
Well, you got the Eagle Claw laser sharps.
No, it's called something else. It's tapered.
I don't know.
They call it it's supposed to be the sharpest hook out there, but it's made by Eagle Claw. But anyway, just there again, you get an Eagle Claw. Say you got a Gamakatsu J hook. How much sharper does a hook have to be? I mean, I don't believe you can get too much sharper on a hook than
I know.
Your standard hooks seem like they got a point on the sharp as hell.
You used to have to sharpen your hooks. You don't really have to sharpen your hooks anymore. They're are they chemically sharpened?
Trocar. Thank you, Mark Coburn. Yeah, and I've looked at the tips of those. Tony Caton sent me some of them, and he said that is they're lasered, the way they're chiseled on the end. They say that's the sharpest hook on the market. You really have to be careful with them, but just how sharp can a hook? Just how sharp can you get a fishing hook? I don't know.
Let's see. Dave Mercer said, sometimes I've wondered if I'm trolling. Say I have 4 lead core lines out and 2 planer boards out each side with A-rigs and or swim baits. Is it possible that too many baits when using artificials spook the fish? Was pondering this yesterday. I've never pulled a lot of A-rigs. I really don't know from experience. Most A-rigs I've ever pulled have been 2. I've pulled other baits along with A-rigs, like swim baits, deep diving plugs, but I've always just had 1 A-rig on each side on planer boards, like if I'm gas trolling on Norman for hybrids or something. But I don't know, David. That's a good question. I would say no, because they're not. If they're not spooked on an umbrella rig or an A-rig, what would multiple rigs? How's that going to spook them? But who knows?
Well, hey, people talk about spooking fish. Hell, they've got a damn thing, or they used to make a thing called a bumper. You hook it up to a battery, and they don't do nothing but that right there.
The noise draw the fish in, and that's a weird thing. If you go to Lake Murray. Go to Lake Murray in the summertime, go up to the towers, where all the guide boats are all at the towers, all the center consoles are at the towers.
Sounds like 100 set of drums playing.
They got the lights, out, they got the drums going, and they got the radios blasting. They say they love noise, but you got to think those fish they're down in like a 50 to 60 feet deep, in 150 feet of water. They're suspended. Can you hear things going on the surface of the water when you're 60 feet deep? I know that when you're in shallow water, I'm sure you can, but are they mistaking it for bait fish? Are they really curious? Do they come to the noise? I know when you're offshore fishing, the fish act differently. There's not a lot of pressure when you're offshore fishing. Any noise that will attract fish, but out there on Lake Murray, if you're in freshwater fishing and you're in shallow water, noise is a bad thing. But if you're in deep water, noise is a good thing, I guess. Dieter said, which bait do y'all use for chicken bait for stripers? For chicken bait for stripers, and is that the same hooks you use for mussels for striper bait? Dieter, you didn't really word your question that great, but
Dieter, put it down.
Small hooks. Small circle hooks is what I would use, I guess.
Dieter, put it down, brother. It's time to stop. I promise you, it's time to stop.
Put down the diet sun drop, Dieter.
But yeah, hey, JR, talking about downlining, and those bumping things. Daniel Skipper's got a thing on his boat that he'll just it's a trolling motor. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's made for just splashing. I'm not sure because it looked like you put it on a midget's boat. But you just put it up and just let it sit there and splash. And when he took my he took me and my grandkids out. I went out with him, so I knew my grandkids, catching party fish. Listen, he put that little splasher out there, and about 10 minutes later, it was on.
Well, if you'll look over in not in America, but in other parts of the world where there are whales catfish, like in Italy, Europe, and what have you, they use that thing called a conker. I think it's called a conker, like Conker or something. It looks like it's shaped like a horn, and you run it through the water with your hand, and it makes a noise. And I've heard of guys taking empty 20-ounce like water bottles, like an empty water bottle, sticking it under the water and crinkling it with your hand, making noise. Obviously guys use the boat oar or they pool cues. They got the thumpers now. They got all these. I mean, obviously it's mimicking, I guess bait fish thrashing about. Who knows?
Well, Michael Walker and Scott Perry uses empty Coke bottles for planer boards.
Matt, does bourbon make JR more tolerable? The what, Wes?
Perry and Walker uses Mountain Dew bottles for planer boards. They use the green ones so they can see them better.
I could see that for like maybe, as a bobber. I don't know how well they'll plane out.
Well, Walker does that technique. He'll cut it, put an angle on it, and duct tape it, and puts a line through the cap and make it plane out.
Oh, hey, that's pretty cool, man. That'd be a cool video.
Damn, JR, you'll believe anything, won't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was believable. I've used anchor. I've used planer boards in current before. They plane out just as well in current as they do. I'm talking on anchor. You can actually anchor up and put a planer board on, and it'll actually go on out there. It's actually a good technique. You can anchor if you have your graph. You can mark wherever you want to put the fish, and then you anchor and you put your board out, and you look at your graph and you let that board get out there and go over, if it's a current break or whatever, you got to have current for the boards to go out if you're anchored, of course. Yeah, you put your fish right over some good structure doing that technique.
Do you remember, was that you or Dean on the boat with me? We've been fishing for about 3 hours, didn't get a bite, and I turned that astronaut in the ocean and crunk it up, played it over the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it, about 2 minutes later, you caught that 45?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Clint Lassard said, God damn. he said, who would have thought? And then about 10 minutes later, somebody said, play that shit again because we ain't caught nothing in 3 hours either.
Hey, what's up, Junior Warskow? If you guys hadn't seen Junior Warskow's boat, you got to check it out.
Who's?
Junior Warskow. He's got one of those rusty wraps on it. It's pretty sweet.
Scott Perry said Walker puts the line around the top and barely threads the cap on it, and it will pop when a fish hits. That's some Alabama shit, ain't it?
Yes.
Well, JR, let me ask you a question, all you catfish guys on here.
Okay.
I noticed the last couple of years, y'all have went to pulling planer boards, and y'all trying to, I know y'all trying to mimic us as striper fishermen, and I can understand that.
That's one of a few things we've adopted from the striper world. Yes.
Hey, but on the other hand, we mimic y'all because we cut bait like hell.
We all stole it from like walleye fishermen or something. Yeah. But go ahead.
Okay. Have you noticed now? Do y'all still on the catfish end? Will y'all catch bigger fish with the planer boards, or you still catch bigger fish cut baiting? And what's being used more now? Do you see more catfishermen pulling planer boards? Dieter going back to the old method.
Somebody like Dieter that uses planer boards regularly could answer that. I use planer boards, but it's very rare. I mean, 1 out of 10 trips will I actually pull planer boards for catfish. I'm an anchor guy.
Yeah,
I like anchor fishing, but I would imagine that they would do pretty well. I know.
Yeah.
Dieter loves them. I was out there on the lake last Monday and ran into Dieter, almost ran into his boards. I come up to talk to him, and he had some boards like a mile out. I was like, dude, you're not striper fishing. You can't have boards out that far. Catfishermen don't have boards out that far.
Well, why not? I mean, catfish don't fight like a striper. They ain't shit to get to the boat. I mean, you can leave them out there. You could have them out there 200 yards. It'd just be like dragging a log in. Yeah.
Okay, so Dieter.
All right, Dieter, where you at? I made that comment for Dieter. Where you at, Dieter?
Beating on the deck of the boat. He said they're so stupid they can't tell the difference between a bait school and somebody beating on the deck of the boat.
We're talking about hybrids, Dieter. We're not talking about stripers, brother.
Patrick said, I seen 30 Mountain Dew bottles floating around one time.
Thomas Walker said he's going to take Thomas. I've caught an 81-pound catfish, and it didn't impress me at all. I may have just caught a lazy one. Maybe it's just, because she had a belly full of mussels, or he had a belly full of mussels. Well, yeah, JR, on the catfish. Now, on the striper, the females are the bigger of the species. Now, how does that work with catfish? Is y'all's males bigger, or the females bigger in the catfish?
That's a good question. I think that the females are typically your bigger fish. I'm not 100% sure though. Okay, like if you look at noodling, for example, those are male fish most of the time. The flatheads, the people they call them coffins. They could be anything that you construct to put in shallow water for when the catfish spawn. The female goes in there and lays her eggs, and the male, she leaves. The male stays there and guards them, and he's not really eating. Usually when they're on spawn, they're not eating, but he's guarding the eggs. So what the guys do, anything that comes in there, that comes into a flathead's den, he's gonna hit it aggressively. He's not necessarily wanting to eat it, but he's just wanting to kill it.
Yeah.
But he will eat it. But anyways, the guys that are noodling, they go down and they stick their arm in there, and they hit your arm, and you go out through their gill plate, and you come up out of the, you're under the water, and you come up out of the water, and you got this giant flathead. You've seen people noodling on TV.
Yeah.
Well, those are males. More than likely, those are males. So obviously, male flatheads get pretty darn big.
Well, everybody on here is saying D and Thomas and JR Warsaw. If I say that right, Warsaw.
I think some people call him JR. I think he goes by Junior.
Junior. Mm-hmm. Juniors. They said the females are bigger also in the
females are bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. Terry Calder said, "Not my hand." Yeah, that's something I'm not sticking my hand nowhere I can't see it on purpose anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine this is an adrenaline rush. You can cheat and use a glove. So,
ain't that what Hannah Barron, that girl Hannah Barron Outdoors, ain't that what she does?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Have you ever? I learned this tip from Jeff Manning. He would anchor up, and if there's any current, if there's any wind or current, instead of double anchoring, you can anchor up, obviously out the front of the boat, and then you can put a drift sock out the back. Have you ever tried that, Wes?
What's that now, buddy? I'm sorry, I was reading a post.
Anchor, off the bow like normal, yeah. But instead of like double anchoring, if there's any current or wind, putting a drift sock out the back.
Yeah, I usually just single anchor. I don't think I've ever double anchored since I've been fishing, unless I'm with somebody like Perry. I don't like throwing one anchor. I damn sure ain't throwing two.
Well, most of the time you're anchoring, you're probably anchoring in current, aren't you?
That's correct.
Yeah. So you really it snaps you taut, and you really don't have to use two.
But now I'll tell you one thing I like about Tennessee too is there's so many places, and there again, we're talking about boats. I probably won't be able to do this if I buy that other boat, but I'll beat your boat in a minute. If there's a spot I want to fish and I can cast to it, I will beat that boat in a minute just so I don't have to throw anchor. But there again, like you said, the drift sock, and sometimes though, depending on what kind of current you're in, mm-hmm. You're gonna get a little sway back and forth, and as Asher would say, I
don't think that hurts anything. I mean, ideally you want to be perfectly still, but I don't think moving around a little bit. As long as you're on your lines, you have to man your lines just like you do if you're pulling boards. You got to watch them. If they get leaves on them, you got to pull them in and out. If you're coming up on somebody's dock or some trees or whatever, you have to be on it. And it's the same way when you're anchor fishing. If your boat happens to move any, then you need to make adjustments.
Oh yeah, hey Thomas, I got you there again. If I get this boat that I'm looking at, I've already been looking at some 36 volt iPilot self-deploy. I know when those trolling motors first come out, I think people were having issues with them. especially in the wintertime, they'd get froze up, wouldn't deploy among other things. And if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong. It could have been Chris Brown that told me, him or somebody told me that it was wintertime and they couldn't get it to deploy, so they pissed on it to thaw it out so it would deploy. How true that is, I don't know. I guess
Hey, that sounds like that would work.
Yeah. But I don't know how good they are now. I don't know if they've overcome those issues. I always said to a man, if you're too damn lazy to put your own trolling motor out, you don't need to be fishing. But this boat that I'm looking at is a big cuddy cabin, and I'm not walking around to the front, up and down them steps to put a trolling motor out when I can mash a button. So,
yeah, the button's nice. I don't know. I mean, my boat is so small that it's nothing for me to just hop up there and hit it. And I got the old Riptide. I finally greased it, oiled it. It was kind of stiff there for years. And I finally put some oil on it, so it goes down now.
Did you WD-40 it?
Pretty much. I put some of my BMX bicycle chain oil on it.
Damn. De-icer. Eric Whitfield, they're good. I've used them for the last few years, and you won't say that again after having one. Lazy man's fishing, Eric. Daryl Barney said de-icer. Yeah, JR, we was talking about techniques too. I think, and there again, I guess it depends on, like, I don't know about catfishing because I don't do it no more, but I guess it just depends on the conditions too as to what technique you're going to use.
Right.
Me personally, when I'm striper fishing, I do like to pull boards early in the morning. But when the sun comes up, when the sun gets high, I've always heard stripers don't like to feed up. The sun blinds them, especially where we fish in shallow water, Tennessee.
Yes, they're supposedly extremely light sensitive. They got big eyes.
So I will cut bait. And that's just always been my favorite form of. I've caught bigger fish cut bait than I ever have pulled on a planer board. I'm
going to respond to Dieter here, and then I'm going to talk about a technique. Dieter, you're going to laugh at me, but you probably won't be surprised. But I just recently found out what that hook is for on a tripod. Guys, there's a hook in the center of a tripod that is made to put your camera bag or something of some weight on that will anchor that tripod. And had I had something on that I would not have lost because I had a 73-inch tripod, 73, 74, and I had it extended. I had it at probably around, I don't know, 45, 50 inches. And I mean, yeah, it started to fall over and I couldn't get to it. Blah, blah, blah. You know the story. But anyways, there's a hook in the center of that tripod. Had I had something of some weight hanging on that, I would have never lost it. But techniques. I've noticed, guys, especially on Lake Wiley, you don't really see it as much on Lake Norman because Lake Norman's primary structure is docks. I mean, I can go out on Lake Norman and I can find docks, that is, 30, 40, 50 feet deep. So I have no trouble. Even in the dead of winter, January, February, I can go out there and I can jig docks and catch crappie like crazy. I'm good on Lake Norman. I'm not so good on Lake Wiley. Lake Wiley's a lot more shallow. When I go to Lake Wiley, I went up in the back of Mills Creek a couple of weeks ago. The crappie are not on the docks in that creek. I went out toward the mouth of the creek, out into the docks that are in 18 to 20 feet of water. Nothing. So, the thing about Wiley and what's popular on Wiley, and the reason being is because of its depth, is long lining. And I see Jeff Manning do it all the time. I think Dieter does it. My friend Alan does it a lot. Lee Huffman does. A lot of guys do it. But what happens is in the wintertime, the crappie are out in the main channel. They could be out there in 30 to 40 feet of water over top of some trees. And as February rolls along, we start getting these warmer temps. That water temp starts to climb up into the upper 40s, low 50s. The crappie start to stage up into the mouths of creeks. That's when the guys start long lining for them. It's like in that pre-spawn, when they're getting into that pre-spawn mode, they go out there, they long line for them. Then a lot of times what will happen is a cold front will come in and it'll move them back out into the deeper into the main channel. But as you start to get on in the spring, they come on up into the creeks and they get on the brush piles on the docks, and that's when I can catch them on Lake Wiley. I can catch them on Norman year round. Lake Wiley, I'm more of a late February, spring kind of guy. But that's also when I catfish too. I look at other fish's movements. I always talk to the bass fishermen. When the bass are up on the banks, it helps me decide where I'm going to fish for catfish. When I talk to crappie fishermen, whatever, I listen to what other guys are, their species they're targeting or doing. Because, my fish are feeding on their fish. So it gives me a good idea where to go and what to do.
Hey, JR, I got a dumb question. I've never asked this before. And this has been an issue. I don't do it striper fishing, and I'm pretty sure I've missed a lot of fish that I may have caught. But when y'all pulling planer boards or even cut baiting, do y'all use stinger hooks catfishing?
I use stinger hooks when I used to offshore fish. I can see for catfishing. I don't know. I don't. No, I don't. I feel like, the fish I'm after, they're going to take the entire bait. They're not going to short strike it. First of all, I'm not trolling.
Yeah.
They got plenty of time. They're going to take the entire bait. I don't have to worry about stinger hooks. I don't get a lot of short strikes using giant baits for catfish. I could see if you're pulling live bait, if you're trolling live bait, I could see it. Fish, sometimes they come up, they short strike. They might only hit half the bait a lot. I know most of the time stripers try to eat the bait head first. If they were eating it head first 100% of the time, you'd never need a stinger hook.
You said that like your fish was feeding on their fish.
Mm-hmm.
Is a catfish even fast enough to catch a crappie or a herring?
Well, here's an interesting fact. A catfish can outrun a largemouth bass. Catfish are they're very fast. Catfish have a bad reputation. I had a guy at work today ask me today, he's like, man, I always heard catfish are like, they eat anything. They're trash eaters. A flathead's main forage is live bait. If you target flatheads, you can catch flatheads on cut bait, but most of the time, if you're targeting flatheads, you're using live bait. Perch would be my favorite live bait for most people's favorite live bait for flathead around here would be bluegill. I tend to do better with perch. And speaking of flathead fishing, that's another technique. One of my favorite techniques for fishing for flatheads is anchoring on a point and using a red flashlight with some throw. It's got to have some throw. You can buy them on eBay and get you a red flashlight with some throw, because you got to be able to pinpoint cast. And that's what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago with the ambassadors, is it allows you to, put baits, 3 feet off the bank, exactly where you want them. But you pull up at night. Let's say it's a new moon. I remember when I used to throw red fins at night on Lake Norman, the secret was to turn your navs off. You wanted no light, none. You turn your bow lights off, your stern light, pitch black. That's what you wanted. You're on the trolling motor, you're going around and you're listening. And when you start in the spring, when those stripers are upriver, they're on those points at night, you start to hear bait bust, and you'll hear stripers feeding on the bait. You'll hear them busting. And all you can do is blind cast red fins. You're not seeing anything. You're just you're throwing bombs. You're casting as long as you can. Most of the time, 7 foot medium heavy spinning rod, with a spinning reel, like a 2,500 size spinning reel, and you're just launching red fins, and you're just reeling them real slow, just fast enough for them to make a wake. That's it. That's all you're doing. And when it comes to flatheads, I like using the red light so I know exactly where I'm putting my baits, because the fish can't see the red light. You're not going to scare them away. If you don't believe that light scares fish away, go up to any dock light at night. The dock light attracts the plankton. The plankton attracts the bait fish. Most your dock lights, especially in the spring and the summer, will have alewives, blueback herring, shad circling it. Go up to one of those lights. Next time you see bait circling in the light on a lake, go up to it, hit it with a flashlight. When that bait's circling, shine your flashlight on it. See what that bait does. It scatters. You know, if same way if you turn a light off, a lot of guys when they go to if they're fishing under a light, especially on like Lake Murray, that's about one of the only ways you can really catch bait on Lake Murray is to have a hydroglow out. A lot of guys that catch bait that way, they'll get their partner to unhook the hydroglow from the battery, turn it off right as they're throwing the cast net.
Wait a minute. Explain something to me then. You're saying fish are on a light on a dock, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you shine a light on them, they're going to run.
Yes.
I'm missing something here.
Yeah. Well, you got to think the light has been on for hours. The lights usually the dock lights are on timers and they're on every single day. And the fish have learned they know that's their home. The same fish come to that light every night. You know, the light's attracting the plankton. The fish are there circling, just having free food. I mean, it's concentrating the plankton in that right there under that light, and they're just down there circling and just feeding up free food.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the best nights I ever had cut baiting in my life was in Middle Tennessee with a hydroglow bait light out running off the back of the boat. You know, caught 7 fish. 4 of them was over 40 pounds. One almost 50 pounds. Where's the logic? You know, I mean, well, let me ask you this. We was talking about lights. Now, you know, you got these the hydroglow lights. You got the green lights. And some people got the what do you call them? The halogen lights. Does color really matter in light? The people, do they like the darker green, or they like the regular white light? Or
I think that they've proven that the green lights penetrate farther in lake water, and like blue lights maybe penetrate farther in salt water. I don't know. There is some science behind how much of the color spectrum the light is actually penetrating. But yeah, the colors do make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, Dieter Horn, to answer your question, I do fish year round. I hadn't fished as much this year as I'd like to, but I try to go to Tennessee at least once or twice. I usually fish 6, 7, maybe 8 days a month if I'm lucky.
Yeah, no, Patrick, I was just that's not like a thing that everybody does. I have known people to do that before they throw a net. They'll turn their light off to make the bait scatter, and they say, you know, that's definitely.
Yeah, I've heard bait catchers cutting lights off before they throw the net, so they don't see the net coming.
My point was they're sensitive to the change of light.
Yeah. Now, what's the deal? We were talking about catching bait up in Tennessee a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about something about putting tape on. If you got tape, Joe was telling me, did I have any duct tape? He said, put tape around the net so it don't close up as fast. Yeah, so the bait's deeper. So stuff like that does work.
That's right. Yeah, when you throw that net, it's gonna collapse pretty quick. So you know that's fine in like 15 feet of water, but you know if you're trying to catch bait in 30 feet of water, you don't want it collapsing so soon. You want it to stay open.
Scott Perry says the high pressure sodium will kill the hydroglow at night.
Yeah, of course, but I mean you need a generator to run it, right?
Yeah. Well, there again, we're talking about Scott Perry. He said he was tired. He probably wasn't going to be on here tonight, but he's damn sure watching everything he's commented, ain't he?
Chris Ovis said, I'm sure JR knows all about HPS light. No, I don't know anything about high pressure sodium light. I can spot them. I know what they look like. That's about it. I've never used them before. When you turn your light, all the bait scatters. You don't want that. I agree, Patrick. Also, you don't want to shine your light down in the water to catch bait. You shine it across the water. So I guess Patrick's talking about if you're going to put out light to catch bait, you don't want to shine it down into the water. You want to shine it across the water. Okay, I didn't know that. Let's see, Dieter. Sorry, that's why you throw when you kill the light. Why do you throw when you kill the light? I need to back up. Okay, yeah. I don't know. I don't kill the light anymore. You know, I tried that in my, you know, earlier striper fishing years when I would go out and try to catch bait with a light, and you know, I tried the cutting the light off technique. I mean, I don't know. I don't bother doing anything like that anymore.
We talked about this the other week, or somebody mentioned it. Since Patrick's on here, we'll go there. We're talking about you hear people talk about freshly caught bait. You know, they throw a net, put it in the bait tank, put it on the hook, go catch bait with it.
Right.
And I've heard cured bait is better than fresh bait.
Cured bait's better. I've heard that. I don't believe that at all. Nothing's going to beat fresh bait. If you catch bait, if you go fishing, and the bait that you're throwing out, let's say you go anchor fish, or let's say you go tie to a stump. If you caught that bait 15 minutes before you tied to that stump, that's as good as it's going to get. I don't really see how cured bait's going to be better than that. I mean, I've had my best success with catching trophy catfish on freshly caught bait.
Hovis says cured bait's more durable.
Cured bait's more durable, yeah. And I think there's some confusion there. I think that's what people's saying, is that they're more durable. That, you know, because better, the word better is contingent. It's subjective. That's probably what they're talking about. It's better because it's gonna live. It's cured. It's been treated with salt. So
I heard a guy. We're talking about bait. Somebody's talking about Jeff Peel's bait tank. You know, how he could actually pull water off the lake, you know, change its water, actually do a water change on the lake. Mm-hmm. And, you know, somebody said something about doing that with gizzard shad. Now, from my understanding, you can't do that with gizzard shad. They'll die.
Probably depends on the water temp.
Huh?
Depends on the water temp, I would imagine.
Well, no, they say when you put gizzard shad, from my understanding, when you put them in a bait tank, you got to have that salt in there because they release some kind of enzyme, and it makes the water nasty. And then you think that just putting that back.
That could be true. I mean, I could catch smaller gizzard, 6-inch gizzard shad. I keep them alive pretty good in a 30-gallon bait tank. That's all I've ever had, is a 30-gallon super bait tank. But
yeah,
I tend to do better with the bait tank I got on my boat. It's constantly recirculating. It's bringing water in from the lake, pumping it out, and it's just a constant flow. They tend to do pretty good as long as I keep it. I mean, if I turn it off for 10 minutes, they're red. So as long as I keep it flowing, they're very temperamental, especially the big ones, man. Those giant gizzard shad, like a big 15-inch, like 1 pound gizzard shad, they're really hard to keep alive. I mean, I'm sure they're not as hard as skipjack, but it's pretty hard.
Well, skipjack's probably the hardest thing to keep alive, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, for out of the bait fish we use, I think it is.
Now, the river herring, are they as hard to keep alive as a jack? I think a lot of people confuse them, don't they?
River herring and jacks.
Yeah.
They do kind of look similar. I think the river herring has, you know, they both have forked tails. Of course, a gizzard has a forked tail too. So.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, and there again, it depends on what body of water you're in. I've always liked trout. They're easier to keep alive. They're more hardy fish. And I didn't know this till last year. I think, was it last year, JR, when you made your trip with Hovis and them, or was it year before last?
It's been a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I seen y'all. We were all together up there at
at the farm getting the trout. Yeah.
And I was talking to Chris, and Hovis said, and I didn't know this, he said brown trout are actually better bait than the rainbows. He said they're even more hardier. They'll live longer. They're more feisty. He said they'll hit a brown trout quicker than they will a rainbow. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the trout. I mean, my personal best freshwater striper came on a golden trout, cut golden trout. I know they catch fish, and I know that's what stripers up there feed on. Well, you know, depending on the river and the time of year and all that. But I just don't have a lot of faith in using trout for bait.
Well, Gizzard shad to me, you take a 12, 14-inch trout, take a 12 or 14-inch gizzard, what do you think that fish is going to be able to swallow easier?
Yeah, well, you could definitely get the trout down easier. That's for sure. Pound for pound, I would imagine the trout will slide down his mouth easier. But is he really that worried about whether or not he could eat it? I mean, we're seeing.
No, well, we're not talking about what he's worried about. What you're worried about and what he can and what he's able to do is two different things. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He might want that bait as bad as anything. He can be starving to death, but he can get a bait. He can get that trout swallowed and down his mouth a whole lot quicker than he can. So you're talking about, say, a fish that's this big around.
So you got a better chance of hookup.
And shaped like that, it's just harder for it to get him in his mouth.
So what you're saying is you got a better chance of hookup.
A better hookup with a trout.
Because the hook's gonna work better because he's gonna be able to eat it better.
Yeah.
Hey, Clinton, he said night crawlers never die. Night crawlers will catch any fish out there. I mean, I've heard of guys catching flatheads on that night crawlers, especially if you're in current. You let that night crawler kind of float off the hook, it'll do work.
Well, my take on catfishing, though, J.R. was, you can go get you a pack of 99-cent chicken livers at the grocery store and get some of your mama's pantyhose and tie them up around it, sling them out there a half a mile and catch a fish.
Yeah. I've caught striper at Lugoff on marshmallows.
I've heard people catching hybrid on chicken livers.
They've caught stripers in Tennessee on chicken livers. They've caught, they fish for hybrids here at Moss Lake on chicken livers. So you ain't going to make fun of my catfish with some chicken livers, buddy. Your fish eat them too.
Hey, I guess at the end of the day, you got the right bait at the right time and the fish is hungry, he's going to eat. I mean,
you see it all the time. Like I've caught bass. I've been like bass fishing in bass tournaments and caught a spot bass and be reeling it up, and another spot bass come and eat the daggum and catch two fish at one time. And I mean, and like they would like literally die trying to. I know you've seen the video with the flathead with the dodgeball in its mouth. I mean, these fish, I imagine a good amount of fish die every year simply from choking to death from eating a fish that's too big for them to eat.
Yeah.
Can't get it down.
Well, I would say probably a gizzard, a blueback herring, as hard as they are to keep alive, they're probably the go-to bait. I mean, when it's cold, especially when it's cold, you want to go to a smaller bait. It's hard to beat a herring for anything. I know catfish will eat the shit out of them. Striper love them. Spots love them. Largemouth love them. I don't believe there's really nothing, if he can get it in his mouth, that won't eat a herring. Nothing that I can think of.
Yeah. I don't know. I prefer gizzard shad over herring. I remember back when I used to tail race in Tennessee. I remember going to Jimmy Jones to get bait, and I used to be so upset when he didn't have gizzard shad, and we had to get blueback herring. You're not even supposed to take blueback herring in Tennessee, stripe fish, but we took them anyways. But ended up going up there and usually catching our own shad there especially on Fort Loud. That first boil, that first turbine. You get up in the corner next to the rocks. You can catch all the shads you want. So
yeah,
we'd go up there and we'd catch shad, but I feel like shad does better than herring.
I just don't. Gizzard shad are just slimy, nasty, stinking ass bait fish that you have to clean up after and mess your bait tank up. They're not as hardy to me as a trout. I've seen them in the tank before. They'll be laying on their side like a gizzard.
Patrick Miller.
You got to poke them to get them to stand back up.
Patrick Miller.
Yeah.
Patrick Miller's over here giving out freaking secrets.
Patrick Miller's caught more 30-pound striper on Hartwell than any fisherman living.
And now I know what he's caught him on.
I like trout. It's just I've always had luck with them. A gizzard, I've used them when I couldn't find trout or if I couldn't get no bait. I just don't care about a gizzard shad at all.
Yeah. crappie are a
We're
good
doing
thing.
a show. Let me call you right back, buddy. All right, bye. But there again, it's just what you got confidence in, I guess.
Yeah, it is hard to beat a freshly caught jumbo gizzard shad. You get a big old jumbo 16-inch gizzard shad and get about 2, maybe 3 baits out of it, freshly caught.
Hey, Skipper,
hard
if Daniel Skipper said shad is king, if shad is king, what did you catch your 48-pound trophy striper on, Skipper?
Probably trout.
I mean, hey, king is king. You know, king is the top of the line. So,
You know, I think the most important thing is the freshness of the bait, and that's the thing. That's why I think that's one reason why you guys are doing so well with the trout, is you're keeping them alive. Even when you're cutting them, most of the time, even when you guys are cutting them, you're pulling them out of the bait tank alive.
yeah,
And a live fish is going to outproduce a fish on ice, even when you're cut baiting. If you can cut that fish alive and cut bait with a fish that you cut while it was alive, it's going to do better than a fish that was on ice. Even if it's only been on ice for an hour, just a few hours, it's still going to have the advantage, in my opinion.
well, you know, like we was talking about apex predators, catfish, striper. I think it's got a lot to do with they just want to kill something. You know, it's moving. Hey, I'm going to kill this and eat it. You know, instead of. But they're again cut baiting. You know, if they're just, I guess they're just lazy. They want to feed on the bottom. A catfish, striper, both, they'll feed on the bottom. I've caught my biggest fish has been cut baiting. I don't think I've caught 2 fish over 40 pounds on planter boards. Every other big fish I've ever caught was cut baiting, laying it on the bottom. But that just comes from being lazy too. So,
Yeah,
what's up, Seth Hagen?
People say that. People say that anchor fishing is lazy fishing, but you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're lazy just because you're anchor fishing.
Yeah. But you know, and there again, though, it goes back to where you're fishing, what body of water, you know, what's a prevalent bait there. And like Perry said earlier, especially like trout, if they stop trout, if they stop trout in that stream you're fishing, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have better luck with trout. You know, and then on like certain bodies of water in Tennessee, there's a few up there where they stop trout and there's skipjack too. So it's kind of a mixed bag, you know.
Yeah, it is a lot to do with presentation. Patrick said it's all about presentation. He said you got to understand the bait you're using and present it in the way the striper want to see it. Makes sense. Daniel Skipper.
He said that's a fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, you know, and there again, a lot of it's trial and error. You can go do something today and do this and not get a bite, not nothing touch it. Do the same thing the next day and get, you know, and catch fish. And then your hindsight say, well, why didn't this work yesterday? You know, we were up there, we were catching bait 3 weeks ago. We were up there catching jacks in a creek up there at Loudon. And we were throwing these jigs and I was using pink. I think I had pink and white, and he had green and something else. We was throwing these jigs, and I was actually more. I hit the side scan, and we could see the bait. You know, I could see bait in there. We knew they were jacks. So I gave him. I said, "Well, try this," and I gave him a little grub with a little tail on it, a little curly tail. It was white with a little curly tail.
Mm-hmm.
First cast, boom. Second cast, boom. Third cast. We fished there for 30 minutes and didn't get a bite. We changed those two little jigs and had 5 jacks. Just so then, of course, you know, we put them jacks out and pulled them while we were still, you know, trying to catch some more bait. But just that little change made all the difference in the world.
You know, if you're trying to catch flathead, you know, you don't want a 7-foot leader. You know, you want a little 2-foot leader. It's weird because most of the time you think using live bait, you think, you know, long leader.
Yeah.
With flathead, it's the opposite. You know, you're using a little short. Some guys use a little 12-inch leader with live bait when it comes to a flathead. But if you're pulling, you know, skipjack in Tennessee, you know, so I've heard of guys use 20-foot leaders. You know, you want the fish to be able to swim naturally, like Scott was talking about with the putting the stuff on his hook to keep the, you know, hooking the bait through the nostrils and keep stopping the, how people prevent the bait from hooking itself out, how they'll put pieces of a bass worm, or taking a punch and punching out pieces of a coffee lid and to keep the bait from turning around and hooking itself. Scott was saying, I don't want anything on my hook. If you got even a pine needle gets on your hook, a piece of grass, it can prevent, anything that's going to prevent that. If you use too big of a hook, anything that's going to weigh that fish's nose down and cause it to swim, in a way that it wouldn't normally be swimming. That could be a difference. So you want the fish to be able to swim as naturally as possible.
Well, Patrick was talking about presentation though, but there again, you got to have the right bait. They got to be hungry. You got to have what they want. It's got to be presented right. I mean, there's just so many different little things that goes with catching a fish. And then you get out there on the right day when the fish is hungry. I don't think he gives a damn if that fish is swimming this slow or he's swimming that fast, or if he's going a little bit crooked, or if he's laying over a little bit, or doesn't look like something right because he's got a little bit bigger hook in his mouth than you used yesterday. If that fish is hungry, he's going to eat. That is a fact. I think the presentation, all this other stuff plays a big part. Is when you're trying to catch fish that's finicky, they're not really hungry, they're kind of so. That's when some skill comes in. I mean, people think I'm a big skilled fisherman. I'm really not. I know a little bit about fishing. I cut bait. I put time on the water. I'll go somewhere and sit and wait to catch a fish. I'll pull planer boards. To me, there's no rocket science to it. They played this big thing about there again. You'll never convince me. People love fluorocarbon. I hate the shit. You're not going to see it on my boat. I don't believe in it. It makes me paranoid. People swear up and down. You can catch more fish. We pull planer boards on this side of the boat, and we pulled mono on this side, and fluoro on this side, and fluoro caught more fish. I think they're full of shit. I don't believe that.
Well, only way that you have to do that 100 days. You know what I mean? You can't just do it one day. You have to have like 100 trips of documented results to know if it's working.
Yeah. But and there again, it goes back to what you're comfortable with. Do what works for you. If you're catching fish, don't listen to what somebody else says. Keep doing what you're doing. And and if you ever find that place where what you're doing is not working, then you can listen to somebody else. But I take advice from everybody. I've learned so much from fishing with people.
Fishing's like anything. I mean, it's like life. You don't start life at the top. You start life at the bottom. You work your way up.
Yep.
And you got guys that want to try to expedite the process by becoming drug dealers and making a crap load of money, really quick and to get to the top. That's not how it works. You take baby steps. You work. You get mortgages. You get loans. You get credit. You keep a job. You get a 401k. Everything is just.
Hey, let's go talk about 401k.
Everything is very slow going. Learning to drive a car, it's slow going. You have to. If you take a 16-year-old that's never driven a car, when he gets in a car, it seems it's difficult to him. He's never done it before. It's like learning a new job.
Don't mention 401. You just put me in a bad fucking mood. We're losing $300 a day right now with 401.
Oh yeah, everybody's not doing good on that. That's for sure.
But
it's a long process. Fishing is patience, and you said earlier, Wes, that you weren't a high skilled fisherman. I disagree. I think that you're doing a lot of stuff that you just has become second nature to you. Just like I was saying about learning to drive a car. It's easy for us. I've been without an accident for 30 years. You take a 16-year-old gets behind the wheel of a car. He's got to learn. You're doing a lot of stuff that you don't realize you're doing. I think we're doing a lot of stuff we don't realize we're doing when we're fishing and we're putting big fish over the rail.
Well, there again, like I tell people, don't never think you know everything. It don't hurt to ask people. And there again, I'll take any advice. Most, like you said, most advice is free. If you can use it, fine. And if you can't, let it go. It didn't cost you nothing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and I've tried a lot of stuff that I would have thought wouldn't work fishing, and it does. And Skipper was talking about, well, why would you go out and do the same thing today that you did? You did something today and didn't do nothing. Why would you go out and do the same thing? Well, if I got confidence in it and what I'm doing, I think's right, I'm going to do it again.
That's right.
Until there's something that tells me, well, hey, wait a minute, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing or I need to try something different. If I'm where I know fish is, and I'm doing everything right, they may not just wanted to bite that day. You know, I mean,
Right.
And there again, that's why they call it fishing and not catching.
That's right. You know, I feel like we're just scratching the surface on this, but it's already been an hour. It's been a good show, Wes.
Yep. Well, we can keep going. We still got 22 people watching. We can hang out for a minute if you want to.
I have to. I got some things I got to get done tonight, man. I have to.
It passed his bedtime. Bless his heart.
It's not past my bedtime. Actually, I got to go back out tonight, so that's the only reason.
Oh, okay.
But it's 9 o'clock. It's been a great show. Thanks for stopping by, Patrick, Jeff, Thomas, D. Thank you guys, Scott,
Skipper.
Peter. Thanks for stopping by, Skipper,
Bobo, Jeff.
Appreciate everybody.
Terry. Oh yeah, Terry. I did want to touch on this. Terry said, you know, that's right. Works for shy fish. There again, you know, when fish are a little bit finicky, you might have to kind of slow your roll, change up a little bit. But you know, it's just trial and error. This fishing.
That's right. See you guys next week. Good night, Wes. Love you, brother.
Everybody tuning in. Love you too, buddy.
Love y'all.
Later.